you will stop me at 1:30. I'll stop. But
No, you won't.
I've got something for a lot of folks here. It just seems like all of the people that I see around here have or could have relatives here. But I'm going to start off with something that maybe will mean something to a lot of you folks.
Coming my way. This is
our Oma Picky, who's buried out here, and they used to live up on the road here. Where's Neil Hector? He'll know this. Neil Hector. Neil?
Hey, Gus.
Where's Neil?
Oh, right there, yeah.
Neil?
Thank you.
Neil Hector? Well, anyway, this is our grandmother, and that's so familiar to us because when we would come and visit her and get past the front gate. Now, the front gate is very important because right in our dog's house lived Jim, and he was the sweetest dog you have ever seen in your life. He was an English bulldog. Now, what on earth does an English bulldog have to do in this German household? We have a lot of things that we can't really explain, but we would come in, and no matter how much my mother would say to me, oh, you are so skinny and you're just growing so fast. I must have been about this high, but Oma never had anything bad to say about it. Oh, he's strong, and look how tall he'll grow. And sure enough, I turned out to be a real thicky, all over 6 feet. Now, her husband, who is buried right beside her, is pictured right here. He was a very handsome man, I think we'll all agree. Isn't that wonderful? He's a real handsome man. And I've got a lot to say about this. I wish I had a chalkboard or a...
What was his name?
Fritz Vicky.
Yeah. His name was Fritz Ferdinand Vicky. And my grandmother's name was Augusta Dorothea. And she had other names too, like my mother's name was Frida Helena Katarina. And I think they worked this Katarina over and over and over again. But I had so many stories. I have 495 stories I can tell. So you see, you may all have to wait until it comes out in the book. The University of Texas has said, if you get it down, they're going to give you some biographies. And maybe the University of Texas Press will publish it. But for our city reunion in 1985 at my house in Austin, I gathered together all of these stories in the Vicky family. And I have copies, I have a number of copies, which Barbara right here, and I wrote them together, and Barbara has duplicated them, and but I am anxious to give these stories out. These are stories that my mother told me when I was a little boy. And stories that her mother told her, and some of them go back 400 or 500 years ago.
Do you have those to sell?
Oh no, you can have them.
I'm not related to you, but my mother went with a Vicky before she married my dad. I don't know what his first name was.
Well, take your pick. There's Uncle Fred, Friedrich. There was Uncle August.
August. Well, she married August. Maybe she liked that name.
Well, okay. Now we've got Here is okay, Uncle August. That's amazing. I need somebody to help me with this map. This map is about 1,000 years old. I'm a pack rat and I save everything. And you can see it here.
That's an old mount.
Ooh, that's Jewel.
Now,
Take care of it. Don't pat. Let it tear.
people say, where on earth do you come from? Maybe what we ought to do, we ought to face it this way, and we'll face it this way, and we'll face it that way. But this will show us where we are from. And you can take your pick. Are we from Iraq? Are we from southern Russia? Are we from Iran? Or what? But anyway, out of the Caucasus, we are all Caucasian here. We finally got, this is the Caucasus. This is in southern Russia, the Black Sea, and we come and went to the Danube River. Now, the Danube River is what is in blue. Let's turn it around with the other thing. The Danube River follows right on up.
Did you leave anything, John? Did you leave anything up there? Oh, you got it for Trish?
Not because of the blue Danube
He has a sweet
wall, you know, but
I got some for you.
18,000 years ago, all of this northern part of Europe was covered with snow. In fact, it was ice, and it was hard ice, and it was 3 miles deep. And finally, the earth started to warm up, just like we are beginning to warm up now. You know, I think it's getting hot here. But this is very important because this shows you why we came out of the cradle of civilization way back in the Mesopotamia Valley over here. And right here, Mesopotamia. The and we got in here, and as the glaciers melted, they presented the people with a lot of food to eat. And they were carnivorous, and they ate meat, and so wherever there was grass coming up,
There was Hoffman's.
as the glaciers melted and the grass grew, also the animals always had fresh food. All the way. And finally, as it melted, they were going farther and farther and farther, and finally landed into southern Germany, Bohemia, and in Austria. And that is, I asked my father once, where did we come from? What are we, you know? He said, well, we are all Celtic. We are all Celtic here. So everyone here is of a Celtic background. Now, I want to point out the history of the river to the history of our family. And this is Germany here. And this is a river called the Weser River. And that is very important to our family because my grandmother came from the west side of the Weser. And she was what we call an Oldenburger. She came from Oldenburg. And our Opa, our grandfather, is on the east side of the Weser, and he was what we call a Hanoverian. This was a principality. And this is also important in our history. You have no idea what history is tied up with those two people. Very dear. Because Otto was a Hanoverian, we all speak pretty high-class German. It's high German. Now, the Oldenburgers, they taught what we call Plattdeutsch. It was a low German. But you see, this is where the Weser River empties out into the North Sea. And They talk High German here, but when they got up here, they talked Ostfriesen, and they got up here, and they talked Westfriesen, and then finally they got to Dutch. We know it today. And it's a stepping stone from Hanover and Redwood to Okay. Now, Otto was in two big wars. He fought with Denmark in the time when Bismarck wanted to get Schleswig-Holstein from Denmark, which he didn't do it. And then, a little while later, it was at that time that Otto met our grandmother, who was just 16 years old, you see. And he was a dashing soldier, you know. And 4 years later, he was fighting with Bismarck to have a war with France, Napoleon III. And because he was a Hanoverian, he was a subject of Prince Eugene of Hanover. And these are all stories that have been in my osmosis. I got them. But anyway, also there's some literature to prove this. He was Prince Eugene was a very heavy-set person. The fact is, although he was a general, but he was in the same war with a lot of Prussian generals. Well, the Prussian generals were very, they did their calisthenics and weightlifting every morning, and they were in top shape, But Prince Eugene weighed 300 pounds, and one thing he loved to do, and that is eat. And I don't know how that gets down to us. We love to eat too, Anyway, so Prince Eugene, all these Prussians, they thought he was awful. He was too heavy, and all the things he wanted to do, he had his champagne, and he had his wines, and he had his beer at every meal, So they said, get him out of our sight. We don't want a thing to do. And put him in the quartermaster corps and let him be the supply officer. Well, but this is very strategic because the supply officer was the one who was always been able, if they needed mules, no, wait a minute, they didn't have mules in Germany in that time. If they needed horses, Prince Eugene could always bring the horses up there in the nick of time. If they needed wagons, Prince Eugene he was a good tactician. He knew where everything was. And if they needed food, Prince Eugene had it. Well, so when they were having this battle of Metz near Sedan, and I have been at this place, they were just about to lose the battle, and all of a sudden, Prince Eugene came in with all the horses, all the wagons, and he just happened to capture Napoleon III at the Battle of Sedan. And our grandfather was in that bunch who captured him. And he would never let you forget. He was the one.
Okay.
Napoleon III at the Battle of Sedan.
Well, what was his position in the army?
He was a foot soldier.
Foot soldier?
Yeah. And in fact, he was wounded in one of the battles. I don't know, but you see, these yellow tags are all things I wanted to tell you so much about. But if you come up and get these things, I'm cutting out.
Yeah, in a minute.
It's so wonderful to talk about here. Listen, that can be rolled up good. I did want to talk to you about the earliest known date in our family. And it goes back to 782 after Christ. That was a time when the Germans call him Friedrich der Große. We call them by the French name Charlemagne. But Charlemagne was trying to subdue all the little tribes in northern Europe. Now, the area around the Weser River, that was called Niedersachsen, Lower Saxony. And it had a lot to do simply because it was so far down that, in the times of flood, the rivers were high, and the north wind blew the sea. It was flooded. When Margaret and I were over there in 1950, we saw the big dike that enclosed the Weser River. Before long, that country was always flooded all the time. But in 1360, they must have had enough organization to build these dikes. Now listen, they're just not a small dike. That dike must have been as wide as from here to those cars. But it has kept that Weser River in check. But the land below was lower than sea level. Now, when a farmer wanted to graze his cows, and he only wanted to graze them on a certain patch, all he did was to dig a ditch about this deep and haul the dirt away, and it would fill full of water. A cow wouldn't go over there. If you wanted a cow to go over to the other patch, you had to build a little wooden bridge across for the cows to go. That's how far underwater they were. They were marsh people, and they were boat people. Now let me see.
Let's go over here where your place was. You'd have to got a park.
Oh, I think I'll just add lib.
Yeah, good idea.
My grandfather, the one that's buried here, and his family, and it was a growing family. And he was 32 when he married. I believe he was 32 when he married my 16-year-old grandmother. And their first child was Friedrich, Uncle Fred, who later married Aunt Ida. And I don't think we have any of them left. Then the next one was August, who Tante Meta, married Tante Meta, and here is Maxine. And then there was Rita, who was my mother, and she married Wilhelm Hofmann. And then there was Uncle Otto, Vicky, and there we've got them right here, and Aunt Lena, and let's see, then Aunt Katy, Rhinelander. Do we have any Rhinelanders here? Oh, what a pity. Well, Rhinelander, you can tell just about where Uncle Frank Rhinelander came from. And then there was, let's see, who is next? And then there was Tata Katy, and Ella, and Neil is supposed to be around.
Right behind you.
Okay. While I got it on my mind, Neil is related to the Hectors who live between here and the highway. And he is trying to get information from anybody who knows about that community that lives over there. So if anybody knows anything about the Hectors over there, and he managed my Aunt Ella. And then of course there was Uncle Willie, the youngest here. But anyway, so they had a lot of growing children, and they were dirt poor. They were so poor that on one Christmas day, the only thing that my grandmother could do was to take the grains of corn and on each plate she made these corn down so that it would spell Fröhliche Weihnachten. Merry Christmas. That's all it was. Well, so Opa had to make ends meet. And the thing to do in those days, if you had a little boat, he had a little, he was a con shipper, he had a little freight boat that he paddled and sailed up and down the Weser River collecting potatoes, burning wood for burning, hay, onions, turnips, you name it. And he hauled this up and down the river. And he just wasn't doing well at all. And finally, someone came in and said, "Hey, I know how you can make meat." And this has been the big family secret for all these years. My mother would never forgive me if I said this to all of you. So my Opa said, "Yes, I'll take this job to smuggle tobacco and tobacco and coffee from Holland." So he did that, and he was doing pretty well. Until one day, a customs inspector came to him, and they were good buddies. Fritz said, "There is some rascal who is bringing in all kinds of stuff, and would you mind if I would ride up and down the river for me? We can catch this sucker." You know, and of course, what could he say? So, you know, it could be my guest. And so everything went fine and fine until one day it started to rain. And they all climbed under the hay to keep from getting wet. And all of a sudden, this customs fellow started to sneeze. And he sneezed, and Opa said, "Oh, I better do something." So he crawled out from under the hay, and his little ship went through the bag. He jumped off, and the customs inspector and boat and everything sailed into the North Sea. But don't worry, everybody who living in that marshy land knows how to read a boat. But I said, "Mama," I said, "you know, in these days it would be marijuana, wouldn't it?" But anyway, these are some interesting things. Finally, he said, he came home after that event. He said, "Listen, I got to get out the country because they're going to be after me." And so he went to Paris. And in Paris, he went to the committee that was helping immigrants or exiles who had to get out of the country fast. And he went to them and said, "Well, what can I do?" And finally, the man said, he says, "Es gibt ein Land, das ist ein Paradies." There is a land that's a paradise, and it's called Texas. He must have been in Texas with all the flowers, the wildflowers. But anyway, he said, "Well, sign me up." And so he came and took a sail ship, and it took weeks and weeks in those days to come across. And he landed in Baltimore. Oh, he thought, "Gosh, what a wonderful thing, but I'm going to go to Texas." And so he came down to Texas, and he came to Seguin, and near, sort of between Geronimo and Seguin, there was a big, even when I was a child, there was a big farmstead run by the von Bergmans. And the von Bergman was a German who said, "Okay, you greenhorns, come on over here, and I will teach you how to farm." And that's what he did. He taught them how to farm. And one day they were digging out some stuff this is where the trees had to be chopped down, the stuff was dug out, and they came across a rattlesnake. And the men all jumped around there, and well, you know, what do you call it? My grandfather, he had been under fire, you know. He reached down there and he grabbed that rattlesnake by the tail and snapped its head off. Everybody grew white in the face. And Mr. von Bergman said, "Fritz, promise me that you'll never do that again." Anyway, but he survived. Here we are. You have to prove it. Anyway, they came to Seguin, and then they got a little farm to rent. And then they got a bigger farm near York Street. It's near Hunter, Texas now. And I believe that house is still existing where they lived in. And then finally they were able to land this wonderful property here on the road to Staples here. And, but I am so proud of both of my grandparents. My mother nursed my grandmother when she was, well, I don't know, I think it was complications. That's always a neat thing to, but she was on her deathbed. Now those people who came over then were getting away from poor conditions, economic conditions. They were also getting away from a church
You can drink my tea.
And all the, lots of those
I have water.
they were free thinkers. And my mother and my family, we all went to church. And my mother was real worried that my mother would die before she had made her peace with her Lord, you see. And my mother said, Oma, you have gone so far. Just think what all you've done since you've been in the country. You have farm after farm after farm. Just think the Lord has been so good.
Take a picture of me.
Finally,
Take a picture of me. Take a picture of me.
But finally, she had to make her statement.
I did.
She was a strong woman.
No,
Listen to Grandpa's telling you a story.
Stop it. He said, Fritz and I did it all by ourselves. I saluted her.
Now, excuse me, Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah.
You've been praising them male relatives. I want to know what the grandmother's maiden name was. The women. You always named the men. Now you name the women. They married. You know it.
How about those bringing 5 kids over on a ship by yourself?
Yeah, to bring it around full circle, to show you how strong that grandmother of mine was. How old could she have been? She started having children when she was 16 or 17, and when there were 5 children, she got a letter from Texas. It says, come on over.
And she
And she went with 5 children. And now, how do you keep 5 children from falling off of a sailboat? My mother said,
Mama, take a picture of me. Take a
No.
do you know what the word sapoteta means?
No, I can't move.
a wiggle worm.
But it was built pretty square, you know.
I did.
Could walk.
I did.
And all these sailors said, we want to keep that boy.
Get off. Girls, get off me.
And he could go with the boat, you know. Anyway, my grandmother came all the way
Thank you,
over.
Mom. It's killing me.
She went through Ellis Island. She went around Florida, came into Galveston, and got on a train there. Now, you know, that's not easy.
No, it's not.
Wasn't she an only child and she left her mother and came back in Germany?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Well, I'm just gonna. I'm glad you reminded me of it because I'm just dropping things all along the way that I can't talk about. But she drove on the train to Seguin from Galveston, and in Houston they saw all those little houses, and she says, "What wouldn't I give to have a house like that was my own?" And so they came here. The first year on the farm, they lived in a log cabin, and it had rained so much that year that all the children, all those 5 children, and let me just say another one was on the way, and that was Tanta Lena, who always, my mother said she suffered from all the anxiety that
You don't have
her mother
another
went through. She died young. Anyway, let's see, where
You
was
still
I?
haven't told me what her maiden name was.
Mama, can I go home?
Schmades.
Made it.
Yeah, Schmades. And we have a,
Can I go
listen, I have, in my papers here, I have it going way back to Heaven's Northwest. But I'll be glad because all the names that I see on tombstones around here, they could fit in very well with my
And that's
family.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And anyway, so that when the water came real high that night, the roof was leaking, and my opa had a big seaman's umbrella, and they all climbed up under the umbrella, and the little children were on the floor, and my grandmother says, "What is das klappern? What is that rattle?" And it was rattlesnakes underneath there. And well, they survived that, you know. And then they got this house on York Creek and finally up here. But my opa died in 1917. And my mother said, "I'm just so glad that he passed away before this country went into war against Germany." But he said that he loved both countries so much that would have been pretty hard for him to take. And if I believed in reincarnation, which I don't, I've always, I think my mother sort of idealized my grandfather. He was a musician also, and I think I picked up on some of that. And,
A little.
Are you going to make some music today?
Listen, I didn't have a 110 plug out here to plug in some electric thing. I almost bought my ziehharmonica. You know what a ziehharmonica is?
Yes, I've got a ziehharmonica
You
too.
do?
Yes,
Hey.
I do.
My Uncle Fred knew how to play an accordion.
No, not an accordion, a harmonica.
Oh no, this was
Mouth organ.
an accordion. And Aunt Ida, she was a Jans from Ida Jans from New Braunfels. She played the accordion too, and that brought that instrument.
Now you wouldn't have to plug that thing in. You could just play
That's right. But I'm going to teach y'all how many. If I would have spoken in German, how many of you could have understood? Pretty good. The rest of you, shame on you. You had it handed to you on a platter.
Yeah.
This language and everything. Think of the literature that you could read in the original if you just had kept your German alive. Think of the music if you would understand so much better. Think of the history, think of the art, all of these things. Now, let's get it down to the economic level. Now that we're getting into global economics, I dealt on the international market. I knew how important it was to talk different languages. Tell your kids, learn as many languages as you possibly can. Okay, that's my sermon on languages. Where were we now?
You're the rattlesnakes and the water and
The next farm. Trip to Seguin. And this lady will like that story. Yes.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, I love that.
Would you speak to groups of people, other groups of people, besides your relatives?
Oh, listen,
they're all his relatives.
you got to see my agent about that. I'm booked up for so many things.
Now, who's your agent?
Oh, here we go. I'll read this off.
Auf Deutsch.
Auf Deutsch?
No.
No, I'm reading it off in English. Okay, the following is an account of a story Mama used to tell us about Opa and Oma when there were only 2 children left in the home. I gather these were Aunt Ella and Uncle Willie. The only title I can give this story is Die Fahrt von die Walküre, Texas style. Okay, here we go. Opa and Oma decided to take a trip to Seguin to do shopping and also to visit our Großmutter who lived there. I want to remind you to talk about our Großmutter. Just to be, she had moved from Germany just to be near her children. Now, Opa had just broken 2 black horses. He loved horses. And he decided to hitch them up to the Surrey on this occasion, even though the horses were new, wild, and unpredictable. Even though there must have been something dashing about him, gallant cavalier as Mama pictured him to me, and I have always regretted not having known him. But perhaps the ideal, the image I have of him through Mama, is better than he really was in reality. Nevertheless, his spirit must have been great, and I'm sure he lives on in some of us, thus binding us all together in immortality. So, now they started out here at their home. So, off to a flying start. They had not come more than a mile when Opa had to stop at Redwood for refreshments. And you know what that meant. You know? He had buddies wherever he went. He loved to set up, you know. And through all of this, there was much to the resignation and perturbation of Oma, who waited in the surrey patiently with, well, here we go again. Duty eventually did recall him, and so they were on the road again until our party drove past the joint at Thorn. Here, a party had been called to the front porch by the approach of the racing black horses pulling the surrey, and Opa could not resist bringing his new horses under control under the admiring approval of his buddies. And let's see, especially after such a hearty welcome, and who could resist drinking to that? And so here we start again. Now this is the second place where he is tanked up. And then this was just what they did. And on the road they went to Geronimo. And again, there was not much agreement between Opa and Oma. You talk about strong women. Oma was a strong woman. Between Opa and Oma, stopping at the saloon in Geronimo. He knew some family by the name of Bretsky there. And
Had a cousin named Britsky.
then he going to talk over his troubles there. And I'm skipping out something. So they went to Geronimo, and then they finally got to Seguin. And also, you have to imagine that in those days, a wife, the husband was the head of the family, you know, and the wife just stuck it through. But Oma was chomping at the bits. Well, she just wait to see what happens here. And with much silent resignation and revolt against the culture which bound the woman to obey her husband. And it was reaching a point where something was bound to give, see? And in Geronimo proved to be the moment of resolve. And so it was that when Opa stopped at Zorn, she knew what she had to do. Now, perhaps it will interest you to know that Zorn, Z-O-R-N, what it means in English. If you get your German dictionary, it means wrath, it means anger, and all of these apply. Passion, rage, indignation, irritation, to vent one's anger, to pour out the vials of one's wrath upon someone, to become furious. And she's working it up there. The chastisement of God, oh my, even that. All of these words are from the German-English dictionary. No sooner had Opa entered the doors of the Zorn lounge that Oma got out her whip and released the horses, and away she stormed.
She released him.
And left Opa and his pals in a cloud of dust and disbelief. And then, of course, they all just put their arms around poor Opa, you know, what did so wrong, you know. Just come on in, you need a drink. Commiseration was sweet in that lounge that night. In fact, it's all night. And who can withhold compassion from a man who has so embarrassed and so wronged and so humiliated before his equals? Well, this went on all night. And Oma, of course, was at home already. Next morning, Oma was scrubbing her kitchen floor. You know, the people up in Niedersachsen, that's all they do. They scrub floors. They scrub floors till they get to the back of the house, and they go in the front and start scrubbing it. That's all they do. Anyway, here, 10 o'clock in the morning, here comes Opa, and he was always erect. Always walked erect. And he driving in a little sport gig, you know, with 2 little wheels and a nice, fast-running horse, and he pulls up and he walks in that kitchen and he looks down ever so condescending to Oma on the floor and says, "Woman, you've got a reputation in Zorn." Where shall I repeat now?
When he walked into the kitchen.
Well, he walked in ramrod, you know. Oh, you can do that after a night out, you know. Ramrod in it, but he always walked erect. And he looks down ever so condescending to my grandmother on the floor, scrubbing, and says, well, I could say it in German.
Say it in German. Say it in German.
Mädchen, hast du einen Namen in Zorn? Mädchen, hast du einen Namen in Zorn? In other words, woman, you've got a reputation in Zorn. Well,
That's cute.
there are a bunch of these, and I can always make copies. I know a quick copy can make copies of this. So any of you want these, you know. Huh?
The time is
Can you hold it for the...
Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
This is fine because I'm just drawing to a close.
Okay.
It's in silhouette.
Oh, I think I'll just end right there.
That's a good place. That's a good place.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You need to put that in a book.
Well, it's going to be in a book, yeah.
Then I'll wait till you have a book.
Also, does
wait.
everyone know who's these double graves and the 2 single graves are?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, I do want to tell you this one thing of my Großmutter.
Yeah.
When she was quite old in Germany, the mother of my Oma
Grandma Ficky.
was getting so old, so they had her come over here. And when she came over here, she was so independent, and I guess that's where we get our streak of independence from. She went into the room, which was supposed to be her bedroom, and she pulled a stocking out of somewhere, and it was real heavy, and she emptied it out on the bed thing, and there were these huge golden Reichstaler. Now, I mean, that was worth, every one of those was worth a mint. And she said, I want you to know I earned these scrubbing floors. And she said, die waren alle ehrlich verdient. They were all earned honestly. And I said, you know, we ought to have that on our coat of arms here. Always a full measure. Alles ehrlich verdient. Everything done honestly. Okay, that's it, folks.